welcome to the Creating Welcoming Environments and County Grants Fund webinar. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Ben Thompson, Cricket Development Director here at HCB, and I've got the relatively simple task of just giving you a brief intro this evening, and then I'll pass over to Simon Jones, the Cricket Development Manager, who will be leading on this area of work, and will be providing you with ongoing support on this as we move forward. Firstly, just a very big thank you as ever for taking up yet more of your time to dial into this webinar after what I'm sure has been a very, very busy, but hopefully a very enjoyable season. We're really keen to ensure that as many Hampshire clubs are aware of this new guidance that we're going to be talking about this evening, and also take advantage of the County Grant Fund. So we're keen to get the message out there, and I believe we're due to have in excess of 50 people tuned in this evening. So it's a great start in getting the message out there. So as I say, thank you very much for giving up part of your evening tonight. Si, if you can just click on a slide. Thank you. So as you probably realised, your cameras and microphones have been turned off. However, if you do wish to ask any questions, then we really would encourage you to do so. Please, can you make sure you put them in the chat function, which you'll find, I think, at the top of the button at the top of your screen. And then what we'll aim to do throughout the course of the evening, our panel of experts will look to respond to those in the chat function. So look out for a response to any questions that you put in there. And then if there's any sort of prevalent or key points, excuse me, I've just had a message through saying we can't hear anything, but I'm off mute, so I think I'm okay, so I'll continue. Yeah, so if there's any key points or questions that do come through, we do have a bit of time at the end to just go over those. So as I say, please make sure if you've got any queries, put those in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them this evening. And then lastly on this slide, as you can see, the presentation is being recorded, and we'll make sure that we circulate that as soon as we can after the meeting. Whether that's for you to watch again, but probably what we would encourage you guys to do is just make sure that you share the presentation with committee members and people that are going to be involved in any project moving forward. So last slide from me, please. Okay, so just before I hand over to Si, I just got a few other intros to make. In terms of HCB staff, we're here en masse this evening. We've got Rob.pfeiffer with us, emma.cowdrill and michael.pollard, and they're obviously on hand to answer any questions that are specific to those programs that you can see on the screen there. And then lastly, really pleased to introduce to you Neil Higginson. Neil, thanks for joining us this evening. Neil is the ECB Recreational Facilities Planning Manager. I think I've got your title right there. And again, Neil's really here to answer the questions that you may have. So again, look out for Neil's responses on the chat. So that's really it from me. Thanks again for joining. I hope you find it of use and informative. And I'll now pass over to Simon, who will take you through the rest of the presentation. Simon, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Well, we'll start with sort of a typical view of a clubhouse, probably cleaner than a few I've been in, but I think this is a good way to introduce the Creating Welcoming Environments Fund. Just getting from a slide clicking over, just bear with me a second. There we are, fantastic. So what is important really to club members? I think we've all been in slightly old pavilions, slightly male focused pavilions. We've got a lot of our stock we've found has been built, back in the 70s and 80s. I'll just take this opportunity, which I'll throw back to a bit later on, to thank the over 100 clubs who've completed our club facilities audits, which includes, amongst other things, the age of your pavilion, and we're aware that a lot of those kind of really sort of need redesigning, and this might be something that the Creating Welcoming Environments guidance is kind of suitable for. So that might encompass things like electronic point of sale, which has certainly been on the rise since the COVID era, and also Wi-Fi access. And as I implied, then you know, a lot of the pavilion stock is from around the 70s and the 80s, and the lifetime of a building is probably around 30, sort of 40 years before it needs additions or modernizations. So the new grants fund, which accompanies the Creating Welcoming Environments guide, is, I've just been told my camera's off, so hopefully you're getting me okay on audio. You'll just be getting me on audio, which is fine because the camera's switched on. So we'll get over that little technical hitch. Okay, so the new Creating Welcoming Environments guide really underpins all the forthcoming ECB funding. And today we officially launch the ECB County Grants Fund. I thought I'd start with things that possibly the grant fund isn't about. Questions we often receive: what grants are available? Can't you just write us a check? And there's a lot of guidance out there, and you do actually have to read it. It's not a case of too long, don't read. So what we want to hear from you really is what your plans are, and then we'll look at the grants available. We're really interested in your plans to grow and upgrade and develop and modernise your facilities as a club. As well as the guide itself, which you can see the cover of on the left-hand side of the screen. It's got a couple of useful documents in there, which really get you a chance to take a look, and maybe before you get to that question, what grants are available, really look at your facilities and examine them and see again if they are fit for kind of, you know, the new, maybe changing profile of your membership as it comes in. So there's a couple of surveys which we think will be really useful for you to look at. I want to highlight again really site master planning. So as a club, what are you thinking about for your site of maybe over the next 5 years? Looking ahead of immediately, oh, there's a grant project and we can get funding for this, so we'll do it. But more getting you to think long term about your facilities and how they can benefit you as a club. So we'd be very keen for that to be incorporated into your development plans, and particularly where you're applying it to support women and girls cricket. I can't stress enough that your development plan needs to be up to date. It needs to also include specific reference to your women and girls development plan. It may even be a separate plan, but we will need to see that when we're funding, you know, a lot of funding developments for women and girls projects. And the other question again, which again do come and refer to us, is planning permission needed? It is probably needed more often than you think. Neil is the expert on that, and we will have a look at the chat and field some questions about that if they come up. But in short, there is some great new guidance out there. It is far more modern than some of the existing guidance, which is probably about written 10, 12 years ago, and it's the way ECB is going to be heading. And all I can say is to quote the man from Handforth Parish Council, read them and understand them, and we're here to help and support you in that process. So I'll go on now to really outline just a little bit about how we do that. So there are 3 project themes. The first one, creating welcoming environments, the same as the title as the overall guidance, and those are open to clubs participating in our national programmes for 5 to 12-year-olds, or with actively involved in women and girls cricket or disability cricket. And it is an expectation that any junior section will include and actively engage with girls. The second strand is enhanced playing opportunities for affiliated clubs actively engaged in competitive female-only cricket. And the final one is tackling climate change. Now you'll see rough proportions allocated to those three themes, about 60, 20, 20. It's a guide that we've received from ECB, but I will go on to say that this particular grant fund lasts over a period probably up to 2024, 2025 with different annual budget rounds. So again, that's a target that we're looking to get near and hit over the period of the grant scheme. So next slide, please. Right. Who is eligible for the first theme, creating welcoming environments? Yes. Well, we make no apology for this, is that you do have to be engaged with our All-Stars and Dynamos programs or actively engaged with women and girls cricket. And again, as I said, a point worth emphasising, your junior programme does need to include and actively engage with girls. Now, there are several facets to this, which include obviously the social space, toilet facilities, catering, arrival and access. And again, harking back to what I say about a lot of our clubs, 70s, 80s pavilions, I think we can all think of ways which our facilities may be improved, which bring new members, new families. And if the facility is a good facility that caters for everyone, you get the whole family. And finally, digitising a few areas there, which include live streaming as well. So, and that is something that is a big growth area for the club. If you look at the work that, say, Overton have been doing, they've actually got themselves a live stream using the free ECB software, and have actually got that stream sponsored. So things like that can now represent an income opportunity. So yeah, you will need to look at, say, for example, the safeguarding guidance on what you can stream and when you can, but that's all part of the process. And again, that's another potential growth area. I'm probably not the best person to speak about the next theme, so I'm going to call in either, I'm not sure whether it's going to be Mike or Emma, but really to talk more about enhanced playing facilities and opportunities for women and girls and disability, the second theme. So I'm going to put the slide forward now and hand over.
Brilliant. Thanks, Si. Thanks for handing over, and good evening, everyone. I'm just going to give a little bit of a kind of an intro into this, really, before I hand over to Emma to give a bit more around kind of what we're looking for from a women and girls perspective. I think firstly for me and for people who are perhaps unaware, obviously women and girls is a big area for ECB, as it is for us as a county cricket board, and for those that aren't aware, this is really stems from the recent sort of strategy transforming women and girls, which was introduced in 2019, and the whole aim really is to try and make sort of cricket a game that is gender neutral and ensure that sort of women and girls is properly represented across the game. So this is why I think a lot of this you'll see around the theme of women and girls is really around this. A lot of investment's been put into the game, and we're seeing, well, you hopefully probably seen the 100 recently, which has had a huge effect on the amount of people watching, which is great. And one of the big areas of it is around participation, which obviously this fits into. So it is an area which is growing. It's something which a lot of clubs are part of, whether it's women's softball, whether it's girls section, but it's growing sort of massively, and which is great to see. And we hope that's something which you guys will continue to support. Okay. So in terms of from a disability angle as well, disability is an area which is again something ECB is sort of fully supporting. There are a few clubs who are part of the Disability Champions Club programme, and that's something which again this fund is able to support clubs with, whether it's to do with disability toilets, making provision for that, whether it's improving access in regards to the car park, whether it's a ramp coming into the pavilion. So there's a number of sort of facets to that which you're sort of able to look into and to be sort of part of, really. I'm just going to hand over to Emma sort of briefly, just to give a little bit more of a context from a women and girls perspective, really, around some of the work that she's been doing. So over to you, Emma.
Thanks, Mike, and hello, everybody. So we've done quite a lot of work with our women and girls over the last few years, and I must say I've heard some interesting stories from many of them. I think the important thing to stress here is how beneficial it is to your club to have women and girls and families involved. You will get not only additional money behind the bar and from membership fees, but you get additional volunteer support. And that's the main thing that we get back from clubs, is we don't have enough volunteers. Well, we've got hundreds of women and girls now who are qualified coaches, scorers and umpires, and they're also very willing to give of their time on committees as well. So that's it's really worthwhile making your club a welcoming environment for families and women and girls. From my perspective, I think I can't mention enough how important it is to have women and girls in your development plan, and that's something we will definitely be looking at. And also governance. It's important to have a female voice on your committee. Men are great. Men may be coaching women, they may be involved in some of your girls sections, but ultimately women and girls know what women and girls want, and we're the ones that are in your clubs, and it's important for their voices to be heard. We ran a survey about 18 months ago on facilities in clubs from a women's perspective. 39 out of our 44 clubs with a women and girls section responded. Several were having their clubs revamped, so they didn't respond. However, out of those 39, we found that there are 12 clubs who've only got one or fewer ladies' loo. We've got 26 clubs who have got no baby changing facilities. We've got 14 without any sanitary bins. We've got 9 for whom nobody knows when they're cleaned or who they're cleaned by. And we've got 1 club that is actually shut on its girls' training night. So I think those are quite interesting stats and something to be thinking about when you're trying to make your club a welcoming environment. So certainly thinking about your development plan, certainly thinking about having somebody on your committee who's going to be thinking about how you can make your club a welcoming environment, but also just thinking about the added value that having families and women and girls will have for your club, not only in volunteers, but funding as well. Just one last thing from me, just 3 things that have come across, I've been mentioned to me this year from clubs. One club that was running a women's first 11 game, but they weren't allowed to play on the main pitch even though it was free. So that's a women's first 11 hardball team unable to play on their main pitch. A club chairman who told a young girl who plays for our EPP that women shouldn't be playing cricket, they belong in the kitchen. And women's loos being used by the men and left in an appalling state. And just those 3 little things, hopefully you're horrified. Hopefully you can see that that's not going to encourage women and girls into your club. But perhaps by listening to those tonight and thinking about your women and girls development plan and what benefits they can bring to your club, maybe things you can change for 2022 and access some of these grants. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma, for that. And indeed, just keen to stress that if you're applying under that theme too, then the women and girls element does genuinely need to be a core part of your club and reflected in your development planning and in your day-to-day working of your club. This grant fund is not the grant fund to tick a women and girls box and get a new set of nets for the first team. I cannot stress that point strongly enough. Moving on to the 3rd theme, tackling climate change as supported by Sport England. There are a number of elements which you can see on the screen now. I'm not going to go through all of them individually. I think we had a question in the chat about, is this part of a separate ECB strategy? I'll get Neil to come back on that in detail, but it actually sits throughout ECB's strategy, and certainly ECB facilities department have come in and said this is definitely the way that what is cricket doing to be energy saving, whether that be in terms of its facilities or the distance travelled in fixtures or whatever. That is certainly a very strong direction to travel for ECB under the current Inspiring Generations strategy. But this particular theme is open to all affiliated clubs. Flood and drought resilience elements there. Anything that is energy saving and water management as well. This has been on previous grant schemes, and I don't think we've had one, to be honest. So I'll be very pleased to get my first and many more energy saving schemes. And as I say, we're looking to go into 20% of our budget to fund these applications. So let's move on to the actual process of how you apply and how applications are assessed. I want to start by thanking you first of all for the clubs. It's up to 113 now who've completed the club facilities audit. This will give us the biggest and best picture we've ever had of the stock of games across the stock of facilities across our patch, and participants in the county, and those clubs from outside Hampshire also play in the Hampshire League, but also affiliate to us. And the kind of findings to some of the questions will give us an idea of where the priorities sit. So thank you again. And if your club is yet to complete it, there's a hyperlink in the presentation, which you can see in front of you, and that will be going out to all participants. I will also send round a list of those clubs who have so far completed to avoid any duplication. But application is by the ECB investment management system. You need to register 2 club contacts with that. We have about 90 odd organisations already registered with that because that was used for the ECB Inspired to Play funding earlier this year. So how will we deal with your application? Well, within 30 days of receipt, the members of the development team who you saw on the earlier slide, appropriate team members will complete a review of the application, communicate with you as clubs saying if we need any clarification or anything additional for your application. The next step is that we're setting up a new county grants fund panel, which will not consist of those individuals, to assess the application against the criteria, and the makeup of that we will announce in due course. But it will encompass both external involvement, technical oversight from ECB, and involvement at Hampshire Cricket Board director level at the very least. But we will be in touch about that, and that will be ready to examine the first tranche of applications. After that, the club will be advised of the decision, and approved applications on the IMS system will be sent on to the England and Wales Cricket Board. Clubs need to proceed with projects only on receipt of your grant offer letter, and the projects need to be completed within 9 months. And again, probably the last but the most crucial part is, what is the return on investment? You as clubs will need to complete an evaluation report for us within 2 months of the project completion, and that is really important in this first phase for the Cricket Board and ECB to evaluate the scheme, look at that 60-20-20 split amongst other things, and see where the grant scheme is heading for the remainder of the Inspiring Generations strategy up to 2024-2025. Next slide. Right, some key information. Our initial budget is 153,000. So to get, and there is the prospect, if there is good early take up, with a further top up this year. Just to give you an idea and a question of scale, when I started work with the Cricket Board in 2012, the small grants budget was 15,000. So we can already see that the extra money coming into the game is having an impact, and that is a budget which will take us up to the period of 31st of January 2023. So we hope the fund will continue then and beyond, and the pot will be managed by Hampshire Cricket Board locally. Applications are for between 1,000 and 10,000. applications can be for one grant per ECB budget year, which, as I said, runs from the 1st of February to the 31st of January, but you will not be able to apply for a grant on a same theme until 2025. And club applications should cover one main project theme, but we are aware that there may be some crossover. For example, a social space project may also incorporate digital elements and making areas more accessible. So the next steps. Let's take the slide back. Next steps. So again, please do read through the guidance notes in detail, the Creating Welcoming Environments guide and the County Grants Fund guidance notes and information, and look at those kind of two self-assessment tools within the guidance, because tonight is really headline information. If you have a project in mind, please make sure it is representative of what your club's membership want and that it lines up with the project themes. And we are expecting this scheme to be around until 2025, so there is no rush. That's another crucial point to stress. Absolutely no rush to get an application in thinking this fund will be disappeared and it's a last chance. We would much rather that you plan and prioritise your projects over the course of years of the years of the programme, and ensure that you pick the right project theme at the right time. You'll need to register 2 contacts on the ECB's online system, investment management system. Obviously, identify who is leading with your project, and what we are very happy to do is when you have a project and you've gone and submitted your initial application on the investment management system, we will be very keen to contact you to arrange a call or meeting or visit as appropriate to learn more about your project. So I think really that is about it in terms of information. So I'm going to throw back to Ben to maybe pick up any of the question themes, which I think have at least been appearing in the chat.
I have indeed. So given we've only got a few questions so far, we thought we might as well just pick them up at this point as opposed to respond on the chat. Firstly, Neil, I think all of these will probably come to you actually. Firstly, John Sampson, thanks for your question initially. It was around climate change and where he could find additional information from the ECB on this, Neil.
Yeah, sure. The ECB recently appointed a lady called Kathy Gibbs as our sustainability manager. So she's part of the wider facilities team. She's been in post for about 3 months now. So her initial focus is on us as a national governing body. Then she's looking at the professional game, and from there she's also going to look at the recreational game as well. So I've got a number of projects that I'm teeing her into to help broaden her knowledge a bit. She will then develop a strategy based on that. So really, John, it's a case of watch this space for now, but it is something that we're taking very seriously, and we now have a dedicated resource to look at that particular area.
Excellent, thanks, Neil. Look forward to hearing more on that then in that case. Second question from Martin Bull at White Parish. This is a good question actually. Does competitive female only cricket include the softball programme? And obviously that's something that's pretty big in Hampshire, so I'm sure that will be relevant to a lot of clubs that are listening in. I'm not sure if we're going to know the answer to that one. It might be something we need to check off, but Neil, would you be able to elaborate on that one?
In principle, yes, it is. Any engagement with the women and girls growth of the game would be supported, so that's absolutely fine. Fantastic,
good. And then the last question I can see, the third one from Richard King. This is around the poor drainage, in particular with the garage containing all the machinery flooding.
Yeah.
What's the process? And I think Si's gone through that, but if you want to elaborate, that'd be great.
Sure. First thing is it really drainage or is it grass management? Because the two can be interlinked. on the basis that it is poor drainage and there's an issue with flooding. I have an example in Gloucestershire, which is Lydney Cricket Club, who are just installing a flood-proof machinery store. So, and they get flooded every year without fail. So happy to come down, Richard, have a chat with you and understand the issue, and then perhaps pass on some information from Lydney about how they've overcome the problem with flooding and that sort of thing as well. So not uncommon, but something that certainly fits within this fund. Excellent, thanks, Neil. I think that's having scrolled through, that's all of the questions we've received this evening. So unless anything comes through in the next few seconds, I'll pass back to Si to close.
We've had one more just flashed up from Steve T. I think that's Steve Taylor.
Oh, yeah. Good spot.
Our roller is on its last legs. Is funding available to support buying a new roller? Clearly no roller, no cricket. Neil, I don't know if you want to go through. Yes, the interest-free loan option remains as it is. So you can access the interest-free loan scheme, Steve, that's fine. What may be coming next year is some funding via Sport England to support ground staff in terms of machinery and kit. But it's not something that we as the ECB fund directly, unfortunately. So the short answer is no, not through this fund. But there may be something coming in the future. In the meantime, if it's a dire emergency, then the interest-free loan scheme is there to help you. I think while you're on, Neil, I think another query we had received outside the meeting, and I've got an email in today, is are hybrid pitches eligible under this scheme?
Technically, no. Hybrid pitches are something that's being used a lot in the professional game at the moment. We have 3 pilot sites in the recreational game, one of which is actually with our Dr. Ian James, actually his club. So we're looking at the return on investment model for them at the moment. So it's a case of waiting to see, really. You still have to cut your grass. You still have to get them installed. They're not cheap. And they're good for practice, but not necessarily good for play, if I'm honest. So, but watch this space for now. So the jury is still out on that one at the moment. And there's another question just come in around Club Mark. No, you don't. That was a nice easy one for a change.
Thanks for that. And I know just finally, maybe from another one that's come in as well. Simon suggested that this is not about new nets for the men's team. We have a net that needs refurbishing. We have a women's softball team. Does this? How do you present this as a benefit for the women's team? I think maybe that's one for maybe Mike and Emma if they're still on, because I think this could be a recurring theme.
Okay, yeah, well, I think from our end, really, it's really, again, comes down to the development plan, really, and what the plans are longer term for women and girls cricket. I think probably most people will agree, you know, don't necessarily need nets for a women's softball team. However, it all really depends on what the plans are moving forwards. You know, is there a girls section which is being established and starting off and moving into hardball? Are they looking to go to women's sort of hardball cricket? So that's really kind of where I would sort of look at it from, really, and look at, well, actually, what is the longer term plans for women's cricket and where you're looking to go with it. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add at all to that, Neil.
No, I quite agree. It's about the bigger picture here. So if you started with women's softball, where is it going from here? And please remember that this is not a one-year program. This is over 3, 4, maybe even longer. So it's something that you can build into your development plan as you move forward.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Neil. And I know that we've been out on a number of club site visits already, and we've talked about a couple of things along the lines of both master planning for the site and actually some applications that might be eligible for planning permission. I don't know if you could just quickly do a quick 20-30 seconds on both of those recurring points.
Planning. Okay. So planning permission you'll need for nets, new nets, potentially refurbished nets as well, especially if they're doing some groundworks. So definitely for new nets, possibly for net refurbishment, depending on what's required. So seek advice from your planning department. Definitely for non-turf pitches going on squares because it's deemed as major works. Also for electronic scoreboards as well. So if you're replacing a traditional manual scoreboard with an electronic, you need to consult with your planning department for that as well. And that's all linked to the Retail Shop Act whenever that was written, but that's to do with the LED lighting. So if you're coming to us for support financially, then you need to go through that process.
Would, and I've had an email on this, would electronic scoreboards count under digitising? Would that be maybe part of a wider plan for live scoring streaming rather than the scoreboard itself?
Yeah, it could be. There's no reason why not. The easy cop-out answer for me is it's your budget. It's been devolved to Hampshire Cricket Board, so you manage it. I would say potentially yes, to be honest with you, because it's part of a wider digitising picture in terms of expanding the game for the younger generation and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't see a problem with that.
And I think we'd also talked on sites we visit, sort of sitting within people's developments plan about master planning for a site, thinking about your site, what it looks like 5 years ahead, as opposed to going for a grant. Ellen, can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, by all means. So if you look at your particular site as it is now, what do you envisage cricket to look like in 5 years' time? And what facilities do you need in 5 years' time to deliver that? So that's everything from the point of entry to the pavilion to the groundsman's or the groundskeeper's machinery and everything that goes with it. So take that step back and think about that. So there's a bit of we allude to that within the Creating Welcoming Environments Guide. There's certainly something I'm talking to more and more clubs about in terms of looking at the bigger picture in terms of what will you need as a cricket club moving forward over the next 5 years.
Lovely, that's good. We've had a couple of 3 late questions on the chat, but some really good ones that hopefully we can look at. Declan has asked, are grants considered if a club engages / shares with a state school use? Thank you.
State schools aren't affiliated to the ECB, and as long as you are affiliated to the ECB as a club, then you're okay.
Brilliant, thank you. Also a question about how long is required for security of tenure, and can the club offer to improve outdoor decking facilities when they rent?
Minimum security of tenure is an annual rolling lease. That's set out within the guidance. So that's something that we may need to have a look at, to be honest with you. And improving decking facilities is absolutely fine because that's improving your creating welcoming environment. But we'd have to look at the tenure as a separate issue on that one, I think.
And I'm guessing they, sorry, Neil.
That's okay.
I'm guessing they would need the permission of the landlord if they were going to do anything, if they weren't the owners of the site, if they were renting in the normal.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that's often overlooked within leases as well, getting the landlord's permission to do whatever.
Brilliant, thank you for that. And I think finally, unless anything else flashes up right at the end, a question from Fran about planning permission. Would that need to be in place before the grant application is made?
No, it will have to be part of. So planning permission normally takes about 12 weeks. So if you allow a 12-week window, depends on the planning department. And obviously with COVID, that's been a bit of a challenge for some. But planning permission, normally they allow a 12-week window to do that. So you're talking, as I said, 12 weeks. So build that in. So you can apply, that's fine, or have an expression of interest, but you have to allow for a 12-week for planning to come through.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight and for your fantastic questions that have come in. We will be recording this. You've luckily escaped seeing my face because my camera is not working, so that's an extra bonus on the recording we'll send out. We shall send out the notes and all the links within the presentation to you, and they're also going out more widely through clubs. So thank you to Neil, Emma, Mike, Rob Pfeiffer, who's been here managing the technicals in the background as well, and to Ben. Ben, I don't know if you just want to sort of round up and finish off, and then we shall call it a night.
No, nothing much to add, Si, other than just my thanks again for everybody giving up their time after that busy season, and also for you to taking us through those slides. Very well, expertly done, Si. So thanks for that, and we look forward to receiving your applications and questions regarding the guidance and the grant. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.